Welcome back. In case you were just joining us, I am Jen Gaudet, and you are here with CEO Mondays with Jen. We are talking about the importance of fueling our success. We've just heard some amazing tips. So if you missed it, you're going to want to go back and catch it on demand. But now I am super stoked to introduce you to our next guest, Trevor Goodchild, in-level boss, Facebook policy specialist, and founder of Entrepreneurs That Make a Difference. Welcome to the show, Trevor. How are you today?
I'm excellent. So glad to be here, Jen.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So, Trevor, Facebook policy specialist. Tell me more.
Well, I worked for several years at Facebook. I did supporting roles for big companies like Toyota or Jamba Juice and the ads department at Facebook. Then I was promoted to back-end tech, supporting the servers of Facebook and remote access tools for workers across the globe in every department Facebook had. So the past 4 years, if you're trying to load Facebook, it's not loading. I was actually working on that with the Menlo Park engineers that write the code for Facebook, helping Facebook.com stay online.
So all the things that people who are tech challenged like myself have no idea about?
All that and more. It was interesting to kind of peel back the curtain and see how Facebook works as a website and to understand how much of a startup it still is to this day.
That's very interesting. And so when people come and consult with you, you are the go-to expert because you have that hands-on knowledge, and you also can kind of shed some light on why we can't get our ads through.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of like that movie, The Horse Whisperer. I'm like the Facebook whisperer in the sense that I understand instinctively from both hands-on experience working at Facebook and just years working with clients. I've worked with social media marketing teams that have supported Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, and Harv Eker. When your ad is not approved and they won't tell you why, they give you a generic message. Hey, your ad's not approved because it's not following our policies. Well, which policy? Why? How can I get compliant? When Facebook goes silent, I have those answers to help folks get back up and running.
I absolutely love it, but I'm really wanting to hear a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey and entrepreneurs that make a difference. I know that's something that's we've had many conversations about it, something that's really dear to your heart. So what is it about entrepreneurs that makes a difference? What brought you to found that? And give me a little bit of insight into your story.
So I have probably lived about 30 lives in one. It's something that kind of endless curveballs, but you got to learn how to swing and aim for the fences. So when I was young, I was actually hit by a truck and I was put into the hospital after being in a coma for a month. They told my parents I'd never walk again. I was in a wheelchair. I ended up forcing myself after I woke up from the coma of crawling across the floor 100 times every night till I forced myself to walk again. I don't know if it was neuroplasticity or what it was that got me up again, but I managed to walk. Miracles of miracles. After that, I spent years living on the streets in even cardboard boxes, sleeping in an alleyway across the street from the very university I would later graduate from with 2 degrees. So I understand the kindness of strangers. I understand the power of self-efficacy. I understand the power of really reaching out in the kindness of strangers. And so that grit and determination that required for me to survive and to go from living in a cardboard box to getting into the University of Texas with a recommendation letter from the president of Austin Community College, I've repurposed that both for entrepreneurship as well as making a positive social impact with entrepreneurship through Entrepreneurs That Make a Difference.
I love it. And, in today's world, we really are shifting to where we do business with companies that align with our values. We're really becoming more conscious consumers as a rule, pretty much globally now. And so entrepreneurs that make a difference, you're helping entrepreneurs to kind of tie in what it is they want to do from a community impact into their entrepreneurial journey. If you were to give a piece of advice to an entrepreneur who may be just starting, or maybe somebody who's been thinking about it for a while and they keep waiting till the right time to be able to give back, what would you give them?
I would say make sure that you don't get seduced by A+ syndrome. The whole, it has to be perfect before I launch. I have to make sure everything is just right. Nothing is going to be just right. When I quit my job at Facebook, I had $2,000 in my bank account. My rent was $1,025. I quit because I felt I was called to do better things. And the fact is that we all have something greater within us that we sometimes don't allow to shine forth. Now, specifically with startup life, I believe that there's a lot that goes into it with market research and viability and understanding like what your passions are, and not only what they are, but what are you good at? So kind of this alignment of realizing what am I very passionate about, and out of those passions, what do I have a skill set in? And then launching. If you're not embarrassed by your first result, you didn't launch soon enough.
That or you have failure to launch and you never launch, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. Imperfect action always trumps perfect inaction, and kind of learning and tweaking along the way. That's something that's been a theme here. And many of our entrepreneurs have actually commented on that imperfect action and that kind of tweaking and going. And also the persistence, the grit, and the moxie, which you demonstrated early on as a teenager with your health challenges. But how are you now finding it navigating in the entrepreneurial journey, particularly as you do multiple things?
So it's about priority. It's about understanding why we're here in the first place. And the goal with Entrepreneurs That Make a Difference was started out as a clubhouse room, which you can find at FB Policy Pro every Tuesday at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time on Clubhouse if you're an entrepreneur that cares about positive social impact. And there we have anywhere from 100, 200 to even 400 entrepreneurs. And a lot of them are in this position where they're successful at business. Money's not a problem, but they feel missing something because money doesn't make you friends, or if it does, not the right ones. And so the idea is, well, how can we align with our whys? What's our sense of purpose? When we really align our business with our sense of purpose and why we're here, that's when things tend to fall in place easier. And it's easier to get good at something that you love. And so that would be definitely a tip that I would have.
Fantastic. I love it. And let's prioritize.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you're on your journey, when you're aligning with your why and your purpose, and you're bringing that into your business, there can always be a little bit of growing pains, right? As we kind of navigate, how much do I give back? What does that look like? So if I was an entrepreneur who was wanting to start to integrate that social impact, if you will, what are one of the first starting places? Like, give me a little bit of a baby step roadmap for those who are watching who are like, oh, yes, I'm doing all the things in my business and I do have a passion for this other thing. How do I marry the two?
Sure. Well, I mean, first, reach out to us and Entrepreneurs That Make a Difference, because while this is just a clubhouse room right now, we're going to build a website to allow folks to connect with each other that want to make a positive impact, whether that's on the community or to align together. Say you had an agriculture company that has a seed bank. They align through Entrepreneurs That Make a Difference with a tech company that makes drones, and now you have drones reforesting areas at 100,000 seeds per day planted, right? This is the kind of alliances I want to help foster through Entrepreneurs That Make a Difference. But aside from what I'm doing, for folks that really want to get started, I would say just take a look at what's already being done. Reverse engineer what's already working for other people and look at where the need is at. Look at your community locally. Start there and see, is there something that I can help out with my business? Can I sponsor something? Maybe it's a program to help community college students get their foot in the door at internships or learning about entrepreneurship for the first time. There's so many different ways and facets that can be manifested once you do that research and figure out where the need is at.
I love it. So Trevor, tell me what you're reading right now, because we are always, as entrepreneurs, growing, reading, listening to podcasts, and mind feeding, if you will, so we can become better. What is it that you're consuming? What is it that you're learning? What are you excited about, and can you share that resource?
I don't know if I can share the secrets of Trevor, of the amazing things that have formulated my perspective. So I run a business book club where we read business books every month. And the last month we read, which was amazing, was Perennial Seller by, I think, Ryan Holiday. Incredible book about making a classic work and about, instead of just hopping on the latest trend, how do you build a work that lasts? And one of the biggest tips from that book I've taken away is when you're writing, pick out someone that represents your client avatar, who your audience is, and write to that person. And that makes it more conversational. I love that stuff. Currently this month, for the business book club that I run, ATX Startup Book Club, it is, what is it? It is Tycoon, the epic, amazing life of Cornelius Vanderbilt, who first started like the railroad monopolies and things like that. It's historical fiction, but it's also a lesson in business. like Rockefeller's history. Read his biography as well a couple months ago, and it's incredible when you see what they did when there wasn't a blueprint.
Yeah, so it's that creative ingenuity and finding the gap, like finding the gap in the needs of the customers or the consumers, whoever your ideal client is. I absolutely love that. And I love that you brought up knowing your ideal client and speaking directly to them, because so many times when you look at advertisements or even brand messages, it's kind of confusing and you don't know, well, who are they even speaking to? And so as a result, if I don't know that they're speaking to me, I opt out.
Sure.
Right? And so I love that tip that you want to speak directly to your ideal client.
Yeah, well, the thing is that if you speak in ways that resonate with their feelings and their emotions, and you use the words that they use to describe their pain points, they're going to feel like, oh, they're talking to me. This person's read my mind. Well, you can frame that to any vertical. And in the example of writing in a book, when you write a book that is really aimed towards that personalized conversational approach, people are feeling like, that's the voice in my head. How do they know that? And then you have instant stickiness.
I love it. And Trevor, a little birdie told me that you were writing a book of your own, and it doesn't necessarily align with your business, but it does align with your story. Would you like to share about that?
Sure. I want to know who your inside people are and who's been reporting on my activities.
I'm not revealing my sources.
All right. I'll have to call up David Duchovny and ask him. But so the book is about my experiences growing up. Before I was homeless, I grew up in an East Side neighborhood before gentrification hit Austin, Texas. And I was the only white kid living there for around 15 miles as far as the radius goes. And I was going to school riding on a bus due to federal race quotas. We were bused from the east side to the west side to a Henry Middle School. As a result, I was the only white kid on a bus with 4 people to a seat. And I learned very early on how to see beyond just innate, class prejudices, white privilege, things like that, that a lot of people, it's not harmful in their intention. It's just how they're raised. It's learned behavior, passed down generation to generation despite the internet. And so this book is kind of a tell-all about what it's like growing up as the only white kid in this neighborhood and how to have more racial sensitivity and how to have fluency in that instead of maybe I took a sociology class, I visited the ghetto in Harlem, or I visited Africa. Now let me white-splain to people race relations. This is more like from the ground up of what it was like knowing gang dealers, Crips and Bloods, and what that meant like from the ground up. So the title is Pretending to be White. The subtitle is, if you can't talk about race, you're probably racist. And I know it's
Ooh, that's a sticky topic. Grabby title too.
Yeah. Well, it's not meant to just hop on a trend or anything. It's meant to be a vehicle for folks that maybe they intend really well. They want to do well. They just don't understand what it really means to live in the conditions that are not their own. And so I want to help bring people to the table, have real discussions.
I love it.
Fostering
those real conversations. So if you are intrigued by entrepreneurs that make a difference, Facebook policy specialists, which we all need these days, or if you want to hear more about Trevor's efforts to really bridge the gap in racial relations, how can we reach you?
Well, you can just send me an email, trevor@trevorwgoodchild.com. You can also opt into my mailing list for entrepreneurs that make a difference at trevorwgoodchild.com/entrepreneurtalk. That's a good way to find me on LinkedIn, FB Policy Pro on Clubhouse.
Thank you so much, and it's been such a pleasure having you here. So we have heard all kinds of goodness today. We are just dropping gems right and left for entrepreneurs that want to make a difference. And we are about to have a brief commercial break, but stay tuned because I am bringing Jamie up next, and she is going to bring the fire for the next segment in our show. You will not want to miss it. See you soon.